So it was more working with activity and movement and working with the person. And manipulation or joint mobilization has always been a part of what we do. But it wasn't the only technique. And there have been turf battles, and they're still going on between physical therapists and some chiropractors, and more on the level of the chiropractic organization, I think, than any particular chiropractors. Because I know a bunch of chiropractors, and they don't have a problem with anything that I do. You know, if I pretended to be a chiropractor and put up a chiropractic license or something, or a sign, you know, then they would have a reason to object. But
what prompted you to train to become an Alexander Technique teacher?
I think that it goes back to what I was talking about with the sensory awareness and that quality of touch and my own awareness for myself. If you take the subtitle of Back Pain Solutions, I was looking at that, and the subtitle is How to Help Yourself with Posture Movement Therapy and Education. And I was thinking, when I was looking at that earlier today, that how to help yourself, first of all, I was looking to help myself.
Yeah.
That was the start of everything, pretty much, that I've gotten into. Because I was dissatisfied with myself in many, many different ways, even as a kid. So I was looking for methods to help myself, and I began to realize that this whole notion of the art of awareness and the work that I'd done with sensory awareness, that if I become more open to what I'm experiencing, that in itself can make a tremendous difference in how I function.
Yes.
So, going back to your question, I'm not sure exactly what the question was.
Why did you decide to become an Alexander
teacher?
teacher?
Yeah. At that point, I was already a physical therapist, and I had gravitated towards this understanding of the importance of awareness, and I wasn't finding that in the traditional physical therapy teaching. So the Alexander Technique I had enough lessons at that point, and it was a hands-on technique. I could learn to be a teacher, and I felt it would integrate well with the physical therapy skills, and it already had, because even the stuff that I was reading and the lessons I was taking as an individual student, even before I started training to be a teacher, it made a difference in what I did with people.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely just a very positive thing that I realized that I could bring into the physical therapy, and it would make a big difference, and it has over the years.
I heard of one survey where something like 75% of physical therapists after 10 years are no longer practicing physical therapy. There's such a high burnout rate in the profession.
Tremendous burnout rate.
You don't meet many old physical therapists,
well,
because the work is just so demanding that unless you're using yourself really well,
yeah,
not many people are going to be able to keep doing it year after year.
That can be, I don't know, I'll take your word for the statistics, but it sounds reasonable. Certainly I had my periods of burnout, and it wasn't only the physical demanding, because when I started I was a relatively young man, and I'm a pretty hardy individual, and I was graced, not through any efforts on my part, that I think my father, who was he was what they call a natural athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I never got involved with organized sports, I've always had a kind of a physicality,
yeah,
that was a little bit easier for me than maybe for some other people. So I must have gotten that from my father's, just genetics. So I was able to get away probably with the physically demanding part. I was able to get away with for many years just because I'm a big guy. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, and I had a natural feel for doing things.
Yeah.
But I certainly needed the training, the specific training that I got from the Alexander work. And when I got that, the way I put it in the book, I have a chapter, I have a section which is at the end of the book on education solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically my little treatise on the Alexander technique. And I put it in terms of body mechanics. And if you go back in the literature, not just for the past 5 years that's printed in the medical journals, but the literature that's been written over the years on exercise and orthopedics and body mechanics, there's a whole body of work that most people, including physical therapists, don't know about. It's just sort of been buried in history. If you go back, the principles that are taught in the Alexander as part of the Alexander technique are time-honored principles that many different traditions and many different cultures over many, many years already discovered. If you do any of the martial arts, for instance, or have done any of that stuff, even Tai Chi, Chuan, they have very specific instructions about when you're standing or sitting, how to sit. They talk about having, I don't know if you can see this, but sitting so that the neck is, the energy in the neck is open, so that the crown of the head points towards the heavens. They use very poetic analogies, and thinking of the energy going up the spine. And as they're doing that, the idea is for the person who's the practitioner and learning this is to bring their awareness to that and use those images to help them with their awareness of themselves as they're sitting or standing there right now. And the body mechanics is just incredibly important if you go back into these traditions. And I started digging into all this stuff and realizing it's all connected, and they found they're talking about the same thing with different language in different ways, but the fact that it all points to one way of using yourself indicates that there's something that's beyond one particular culture or one particular teaching, and they're dealing with something that's more universal.
Yeah.
So I basically put it in the book, I put it in terms of body mechanics. And as long as you take that term with a grain of salt, because again, from the physical therapy training and background, there was a and the standard medical training that I had, there's a tendency to depersonalize the knowledge. You're learning about the body, but it's about this abstract thing, the body, and they don't really talk much about awareness. And certainly they talk about when you're noticing this or noticing that, but they don't talk about the process that's involved in noticing something in a being, in an organism that's you or that's with the patient. And that when you're communicating with a patient, you're communicating on many different levels. And you're communicating by touch.
Yeah.
And it's just something that's so obvious when you've studied the Alexander technique, but the good teachers in physical therapy and the good therapists understand that, but it's more of it hasn't been brought in to the conceptual apparatus that physical therapists use in their work. And I think I could go off on a more general riff about